ये कौन सा ये सब आपको गई नहीं क्लासिफाई ये जनरल मैनेजर आपके जीएम स्टेट्स लगाया है कहा कि जीएम ये है मेरे से एमडी ये है पढ़ने वाले दो चार हजार देर में दिया काम है तो नाम तो आएगा नहीं बात तो आप अपने वक्त के हिसाब से प्लान शुरू करवा दीजिएगा
तो आपने हॉलों के ऊपर नाम देखे हैं हॉलों के ऊपर नाम लगे हैं
इसके नाम
देखिए तो उसके बाद में क्या हुआ है बताएं
अच्छा लग
क्या बात है
इसमें और भी दे है दो चार लोग आ रहे हैं
सिस्टम जो है डिस्ट्रॉय होती है तो
और ये तो है लेकिन इसमें लोग भी नहीं आ दोनों दोनों तरफ बसते हैं
प्लीज
मीठी चीजें दूसरी क्या होता है दूध होता है उसमें क्या होता है दूध दूध में मिलाते हैं गिरी अब अभी शुरू हो गया थोड़ी देर 5-7 मिनट सुनो यहाँ है हाँ हाँ अभी 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 हो जाएगा अभी
मुझे क्या
Okay, this room to get programs.
यारी वो ये बिलोंग करने को प्रॉब्लम जवान का है जवान की बात अभी से जवान जवान में इस बात को जवान ये कि क्या करोगे वो काम है नहीं हैदराबाद पूछो वाह शुरू नहीं हां शायद आगे मुझे आपको बात करते नहीं है वो अलग बात है आपकी तो है डॉक्टर साहब सिखाते हैं डॉक्टर साहब अपने उससे लगे मान देते हैं क्या कौन सा
On.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وسي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا ساداتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا ساداتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين رحم الله يا رسول الفاتحة
कोरोना वायरस की वजह से आज हम एक साल से ज्यादा अरसे के बाद अहले बैत के अतफाल की हमदुसना और उनकी विलादत का जश्न मनाने के लिए मस्जिद-ए-अली में जमा हुए। वैसे तो सारे साल ही मस्जिद-ए-अली से तमाम प्रोग्राम ऑनलाइन मुनक़िद होते रहे हैं और आप सब हज़रात उनको बाकायदगी से देखते रहे। ये खुशी की बात है कि इस वबा से आहिस्ता आहिस्ता छुटकारा होता जा रहा है और तमाम सरगर्मियां अपने मुकाबात पे वापस आ रही हैं, लेकिन अभी भी पहली की तरह के हालात नहीं है। दुआ करें कि अल्लाह ताला बीमारी करबला के सदके में जल्द अज जल्द इस बीमारी से तमाम आलम को اور خصوصاً ہمارے ملک امریکہ کو نجات دلائے، تاکہ ہم ہمیشہ کی طرح سارے پروگرام باقاعدگی سے کیا کریں۔ محترم سامعین، جیسا کہ آپ حضرات کے علم ہے، آج ہم اپنے آٹھویں امام علی رضا علیہ السلام کی ولادت پاک کے موقع پر مسجد-e-Ali سمرسیٹ یونیورسٹی میں جمع ہوئے۔ میں آپ سب حضرات کو اپنی طرف سے اور مسجد کی انتظامیہ کی طرف سے خوش آمدید کہتا ہوں، اور شکر گزار ہوں کہ آپ لوگ اپنی دور مصروفیات کے باوجود اس پروگرام میں تشریف لائے۔ ہمارے امام رضا علیہ السلام مدینہ منورہ میں 11 ذیقات کو خانہ ہمارے اہل بیت کے تشریف لائے۔ ہمارے امام نے 50 سال کی عمر پائی اور ان کی مدت امامت 20 سال ہے۔ میں ایک دفعہ پھر آپ سب حضرات کو اپنی طرف سے اور مسجد کی انتظامیہ سے خوش آمدید کہتا ہوں، اور اسی کے ساتھ ہی پروگرام کا آغاز کرنے کے لیے احسن صاحب سے درخواست کروں گا کہ وہ آئیں اور میں سے اس پروگرام کو شروع اور محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ
منقبت کے چند اشعار، ایک اور بلند ترین صلوات۔ دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر بنتا نہیں ولی کوئی ایسا کیے بغیر، دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، 9 لاکھ سر جھکے ہیں تبسم کے سامنے، 9 لاکھ سر جھکے ہیں تبسم کے سامنے، اصغر نے جنگی جیت لی حملہ کیے بغیر، دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، عباس وہ جری ہے جو میدان جنگ میں، عباس وہ جری ہے جو میدان جنگ میں لڑتا ہے بازوؤں پہ بھروسہ کیے بغیر، دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، غاصب فدق کا نام رگڑتا ہی رہ گیا، اور غاصب فدق کا ناک رگڑتا ہی رہ گیا، غاصب فدق کا ناک رگڑتا ہی رہ گیا، جنت میں ہر چلا گیا، توبہ کیے بغیر دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، اور عاشور والے دن یہ مجھے ماں کا حکم تھا، عاشور والے دن یہ مجھے ماں کا حکم تھا، گھر میں نہ خون کا پرسا کیے بغیر دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، اللہ کہہ رہا ہے تولا نہیں قبول، اللہ کہہ رہا ہے تولا نہیں قبول، زہرا کے دشمنوں پہ تبرات کیے بغیر دروازے حسین پہ سجدہ کیے بغیر، صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد. جزاك الله.
شکریہ اچھا صاحب. امام ذل احترام آ رہا ہے، امام ذل احترام آ رہا ہے، اور رضا لے کے حق کا پیام آ رہا ہے، اور شراب امامت کی ہے بادہ نشو، شراب امامت کی ہے بادہ نشو، چلو آٹھواں آج جام آ رہا ہے. ہمارے آٹھویں امام کی خدمت اقدس میں نظر پیش کرنے کے لیے میں درخواست کر رہا ہوں جناب ذکی رضوی صاحب سے تشریف لائیں. محمد صلوات.
السلام علیکم. وعلیکم السلام. ایک بار مل کر کے صلوات. اللهم صل علی محمد. مدینہ دل ہے میرا اور نگاہ کعبہ ہے، مدینہ دل ہے میرا اور نگاہ کعبہ ہے، میری نظر میں امام رضا کا روضہ ہے، میری نظر میں امام رضا کا روضہ ہے، زمزم سے قلم کو دھو کے میں لایا ہوا بے زمزم سے ثنائے شاہ خراساں ہمارا منشا ہے شوق آنکھوں سے میں جا کے دیکھ لوں خود بھی ہے شوق آنکھوں سے میں جا کے دیکھ لوں خود بھی جو عرض توس میں جنت کا ایک ٹکڑا ہے یہ شاعری کی نہیں بات ایک حقیقت ہے یہ شاعری کی نہیں بات ایک حقیقت ہے ہمارا آل کے قدموں میں جینا مرنا ہے بنا دے شعر حقیقی یہ شعر کی تصویر بنا دے شعر حقیقی یہ شعر کی تصویر خدا کے نظروں میں ان کا عظیم رتبہ ہے رضا ہے نام تو مرضی حق رضا ان کی رضا ہے نام تو مرضی حق رضا ان کی نبی کی شان علی نام جان زہرا ہے زمیں پہ عرش پہ جنت پہ حوض کوثر پر زمیں پہ عرش پہ جنت پہ حوض کوثر پر انہی کے نام کا ہر ایک جگہ پہ سکا ہے ہر ایک حادثہ ٹل جائے گا خدا کے قسم ہر ایک حادثہ ٹل جائے گا خدا کے قسم علی علی کا گردم بدم وظیفہ ہے ذکی کی زیست کے ضامن امام ضامن ہے ذکی کی زیست کے ضامن امام ضامن ہے ہماری ماں نے ہمیشہ یہی بتایا ہے ذکی کی زیست کے ضامن امام ضامن ہے ہماری ماں نے ہمیشہ یہی بتایا ہے
تعلیم بے تصویر ایک ہے شیر درندہ کی اصل اس کو بنایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے اور مامون غشی میں ہے، دہشت زدہ ساحر ہیں، منظر کو دکھایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ اب ایک اور اچھی آواز درخواست گزاروں جناب کامران میں انصاف سے تشریف ہے اور محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
اللهم صل على محمد۔
صاحب اجازت ہے ایک مرتبہ اور مل کے بابا سے بلند صلوات پڑھتے ہیں۔
اللهم صل على محمد۔
آج شہید صفی افضل صاحب کا کلام ان کے بعد کسی نشاء نام شکل اور سیرت سب ہی مرتضیٰ کی ہے، نام شکل اور سیرت سب ہی مرتضیٰ کی ہے، نور کبریا کا ہے، خاک ہے نہ خاکی ہے، نور کبریا کا ہے، خاک ہے نہ خاکی ہے، نام ہے علی ان کا، سب پکارتے ہیں رضا، نام ہے علی ان کا، سب پکارتے ہیں رضا، بات ان کی جو بھی ہے ساری مصطفیٰ کی ہے، بات ان کی جو بھی ہے ساری مصطفیٰ کی ہے، تجھ کو آل قرآن کی معرفت نہیں ماموں، تجھ کو آل قرآن کی معرفت نہیں مامون، دو جہاں کی ہر نعمت شاہد و سرا کی ہے، دو جہاں کی ہر نعمت شاہد و سرا کی ہے، تاج و تخت و عباسی اور عرب و عجم ہے کیا، تاج و تخت و عباسی اور عرب و عجم ہے کیا، کائنات ہی ساری جب علی رضا کی ہے، کائنات ہی ساری جب علی رضا کی ہے، اور دیر تو لگی ہوگی مضطرد ہوئی نہ کبھی، دیر تو لگی ہوگی مسترد ہوئی نہ کبھی، آپ کے وسیلے سے جب کبھی دعا کی ہے، آپ کے وسیلے سے جب کبھی دعا کی ہے، تاج و تخت شاہی کیا اور کیا ولی عہدی، تاج و تخت شاہی کیا
اور کیا ولی عہدی اس سے تو کہیں افضل خاک کربلا کی ہے، اس سے تو کہیں افضل خاک کربلا کی ہے۔ مبتلا حرص و ہوس اور نہ خائف محشر، مبتلا حرص و ہوس اور نہ خائف محشر، ہم پخاس چشم کرم بی بی فاطمہ کی ہے، نام شکل اور سیرت سب ہی مرتضیٰ کی ہے، نور کبریا کا ہے، خاک ہے نہ خاک کی ہے۔ بر محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔
حضرات، جناب مہدی صاحب کامران مہدی صاحب آخری منخبر خان تھے۔ اب
ابھی پڑھیے
تحریر تو یہی تھا، لیکن مولانا کے حکم پر پہ پھر آپ کی خدمت میں پیش ہے۔
صلی علی محمد۔
کیا مرتبہ پایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے،
واہ،
کیا مرتبہ پایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے، اور باطل کو بٹایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ اس عالم تیرا کو اپنے رخ انور سے، اس عالم تیرا کو اپنے رخ انور سے پر نور بنایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ اور شیرن سے حیران ہوئے ساحر اڑتی ہوئی روٹی پر، حیران ہوئے ساحر اڑتی ہوئی روٹی پر، اور اعجاز دکھایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ قالین پر تصویر ایک ہے شیر درندے کی، اور اصل اس کو بنایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ موجود ہے جو ساحر وہ سب کو نگل جائے، موجود ہے جو ساحر وہ سب کو نگل جائے، یہ حکم لگایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ مامون غشی میں ہے دہشت زدہ ساحر ہیں، مامون غشی میں ہے دہشت زدہ ساحر ہیں، اور منظر کو دکھایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ جو حجت خالق ہے، جو حجت خالق ہے مجبور نہیں ہوتا، جو حجت خالق ہے مجبور نہیں ہوتا، یہ سب کو بتایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ اور محکوم کیا ثابت اس طرح درندے کو، محکوم کیا ثابت اس طرح درندے کو، شذر سا بنایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ اعجاز امامت کا ہر ظالم ازلم پر، اعجاز امامت کا ہر ظالم ازلم پر ایک سکہ جمایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ موسیٰ کے عصا نے کیا پھر سانپوں کو اگلا تھا، موسیٰ کے عصا نے کیا پھر سانپوں کو اگلا تھا، یہ یاد دلایا ہے سلطان خراسان نے۔ اور ایام ولی عہدی میں 7 غلاموں کو، ایام वली अहदी में 7 गुलामों को खाना भी खिलाया है सुल्तान खुरासान, और अपने होके बेगाने इखलाक को मुरब्बत से, अपने होके बेगाने इखलाक के मुरब्बत से हर दिल को डुबाया है सुल्तान खुरासान। हज़रात, इन अल्फाज के साथ इस जश्न को खिताब करने के लिए मैं दरख्वास्त गुजार हूं कि जनाब रिजवान साहब से तशरीफ है। पर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
नहीं पीछे के बटन जूम कर। أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين والحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعد الله المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ومساكن طيبة في جنات عدن ورضوان من الله أكبر ذلك هو الفوز العظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Greetings and felicitations on this very auspicious occasion, which marks the prosperous birth of our 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Raza alayhi salatu wassalam. And as our MC, Dr. Zafar Jafri, had mentioned in the beginning, that this is the first Jashn that we are celebrating in congregation after a hiatus of almost over a year of not having anything in this way in Masjid. Although the regular programs of Shari Jum'ah and Salatul Jum'ah has been conducted for quite some time now with the relaxed restrictions by the state and as well as the Masjid, but this is the first such Jashn that is taking place after a long time, and therefore I welcome all of you who have joined us in person and still those who are joining us online to this very important Jashn that we celebrate. And inshallah, this is the beginning of things to get better and smooth out and become more and more normalized, so that as the Jashn and the Majalis that are about to come in the month of end of the Qa'dah and then in the month of Dhul Hijjah, all the way up until the Jashn Ghadir, you could expect that inshallah we will have normalcy so that we'll be able to congregate in the same exact way as we were used to doing so. But nonetheless, whatever the case may be, we are very thankful to God Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having given us this opportunity that we are able to do the dhikr of Ahlul Bayt, because there's hayat in the zikr of Ahlul Bayt. With the zikr that we associate ourselves with, the zikr which is Javidan, the zikr which is everlasting, and hence when you associate with them and their zikr, you also develop the same role as Javidan and everlasting. This is the Jashn to celebrate the one who was known as Gharib Tus. If you look at some of the al-qabat of our 8th Imam, the reason he's called Gharib Tus is not because of his, Gharib in the sense of being poor. Rather, Gharib in Arabic refers to someone who's a stranger. That means not having any family members nearby. And that was the case with our 8th Imam when he had gone to, which is the present day city called Mashhad. Near it was Marw, where Imam had arrived. Imam was a stranger, complete stranger over there, in a sense that he did not have any relatives, he did not have any family, just kind of like when you go to a remote place, when you go to a new place and you don't have any family or relatives, close or far distant over there, how you feel in such a city. And then when you come back to your own city, how do you feel about it? That although that city might have been better, that city might have had more advancement in technology, more, beautiful, or whatever the case may be. But the moment you come back to your old city where you grew up, or the place where you've known all the people, you feel the difference. It's not about the scenery and the beauty that exists, rather it is about being close to those whom you love and those who know you. And Imam from that aspect is the first person in the family to have traveled all the way to Khorasan. And being a stranger in that land, not knowing anyone over there, not having any family relatives close by. So in the ziyarat, we call him Gharib al-Ghuraba, or in other places, we call him Gharib Tus. That is a purpose. But imagine someone being Gharib al-Ghuraba, being Gharib Tus, to becoming the Shah of Khorasan, become the Shah of Tus. At that time, when Imam had arrived, he was Gharib, and now he's the Shah and the Badishah of that entire land. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As mentioned in the poetry as well, the wiladat of our 8th Imam is on the 11th day of Qa'dah. Imam alayhi salatu wassalam was born in the year 148, and his shahadat is in the year 203. It is also the same year that Imam's birth is the shahadat of our 6th Imam. And in fact, in a tradition of our 6th Imam, when he was mentioning about his grandson, and he referred to him as the one who's Alim of Ali Muhammad. One of the titles that is given to our 8th Imam is Alim of Ali Muhammad. Imagine this title. All of the Imams are ulama, they are scholars, they are alim, they are manbai ilm, they all possess the extreme knowledge. Yet amongst all of them, one person is called Alim of Ali Muhammad. Just imagine the status of such an individual. But Imam said, I wish I get to live long enough to see my grandson. But that was not to be. Imam passed away in the same year as our 8th Imam was born. I wanted to, tonight, in this time that I have, share under this ayat that I have recited for you from Surah Tawbah, which is ayat number 72, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a promise to the believers and the believers, male and female, believing men and believing women. So both are mentioned in this ayat. What is the wa'ada of Allah? Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar. One of the wa'ada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the believing men and women is the paradise beneath which rivers are flowing. This is istilah And this is the terminology that we're all very much aware of. He says, خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. These people will live in this forever. مَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً. And they will have maskan. Masakin is the plural of maskan, a place to live, a house. You know, even the word sukuna means a place, a house where you dwell, where you live in. Fi jannati adnin, in the perpetual residence. So you look over here that even in the paradise, we are in need of a house. Even in paradise, we are in need of a place of residence. Now there's a difference between the place of residence over there and the place of residence over here. Both are the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, if someone buys a house in this world, they say it's a ni'mat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I had nothing of my own. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed enough to me that I'm able to buy a house, for example. And this house is a ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we all look at everything that we have in our possession, temporarily it may be, as the ni'mat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the house that we have, the family that we have, the vehicle that we might have, the wealth that we have, the health that we have, all of these are what? Favors from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says the similar thing is being mentioned in the hereafter. That in Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also saying that وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. Allah is making a promise to mu'mineen and mu'minat. And we know, إِنَّ وَعَدَ اللَّهِ حَقًّا, that the wa'ada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, promise of Allah, is truth. And on reality, لَا يُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not go against the promise that He has made. So that promise is true. But the promise is about a house in paradise, maskan in paradise, dwelling in that perpetual residence with all the favors and the ni'mat that will be given over there. So what is the difference between a house that we have over here, which is also a ni'mat of Allah, and the house that we have, inshallah, when we go to paradise, which is also a ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Mufassirin mention a slight difference between the two. One is, of course, the house that you have in this world is temporary, is not forever. You know, even when you're living in that 80, 90, 100 years of your life, maybe you live in a house for 10 years, then you move to another house. Then you live in that house for 20 years, you move to another house. Maybe you live in another city for next 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. So even when you are living in a house in this world, it's temporary of that nature where you change it very often. And also, even if you were to live in that house your entire lifetime, it still is something which is of temporary nature. But the houses that are given over there in the hereafter, it says what? Khalidina fiha. They are forever. There is no expiry date on it. That does not mean that your lease will end after so and so. You will have to hand it back over after a certain period of time. None of those things exist. That's one meaning of it. Second meaning that the ulama and the mufassirin have mentioned, comparing the house which is the ni'mat of Allah in this world and the house which is the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. What is the difference between the two? He said any ni'mat that you gain in this world, usually the ni'mat come with some hard work. If someone receives something without having to do anything, then they squander it. But the house that you have built with your own hands, with your hard-earned money, you take care of it. The car that you have bought with your hard-earned money, you take care of it. And even though if something is given to you without having to work for it, still you should take care of it so you don't squander that opportunity. But nonetheless, the house that you have built yourself, you feel that you had to go through so much pain before you got this house. A lot of people will tell you this story, how long that they had to suffer. For example, even when it comes to your practical life, when you're working, your job, as a physician, you ask a physician, you ask a doctor, medical student, the years of hard work that they have to go through. And then when they have gone through all the studies that they have to compete with other physicians to match into whatever field that they want to get into. And then they have to go through this residency for a couple of years or even longer sometime. And even after that, sometimes they will land a job somewhere. So it's a very long process before they can start really cashing in all that they had worked for, hard work. But this goes along in every other field as well. So the point that I'm trying to establish over here is that any ni'mat that you have has some sort of difficulty associated with it. You won't say, I got this place without any hard work. No, I had to go through difficulties. I had to face turmoil before I got to this maqam. Now, alhamdulillah, I'm at this maqam, right? Do we all agree? I got this house, but with this much struggle that I had to go through. Mufassirin mentioned this is the difference between the house that you're given here in the world and the house that you're given over there in the hereafter. The house that you're given over here, you have to struggle for it. But the house that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bestow upon you in the hereafter, there's no struggle needed over there. And that is given to you with all the hard work that was done in this life. So that is the prime difference between the two. After having mentioned all of these favors, Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar khalidina fiha, all of those things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and He changes the tone. He says, وَرَضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ akbar. Yes, the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the benefits, the bounties, the house, the dwellings, the perpetual residence, the fruits, the reclining couches, the hur and ghilman, and all of those things that you will be given over there. All those on one side, وَرَضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ akbar. But the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on another side. The pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the approval from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater. It is that which is a great attainment. You might be able to get all of that. But what is greater than that is the approval of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But of course, the approval of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in a tuli, in a vertical concept. In order to get to the approval of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to get to the approval of Khatam al-Anbiya, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And in order to get to the approval of Khatam al-Anbiya, you have to get to the approval of Aimma Athar alayhi wa salam, because Prophet said, Ana madinatul ilm wa aliyun babuha. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْعِلْمَ فَلْيَأْتِ بِهَا. That I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its door, and whoever intends on incoming inside this city has to come through the door that is Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wa salam. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So Imam alayhi salatu wa salam, his name, one of the titles is Raza. Allah says in this ayah, وَرَضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ akbar. The approval of Allah and the pleasure of Allah is superior. One of the titles of a Imam is Ar-Rada, that he's well pleased, that he has done something which has satisfied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although all of the Imams are considered to be Razi bil Qadr wal Qadha. Someone said that Mamun had given this title to Imam Ar-Rada. Our ninth Imam said that person is a liar who says that Mamun is the one who has given Imam Ar-Rada the title of Rada. Rather, this title was given to him by Rasulullah. Rasulullah, in his tradition, when he mentioned the names of each and every Imam, he also mentioned the titles of those Imams. In fact, he also mentioned the kuddiyat of all the Imams, and that is why a person would say, what is the kunya? Usually in the Arab world, this agnomen, which is your title, which you are referred to by, is with your son or with your daughter. For example, if you have a son, you will be called Abu, for example, Ali. If you have a son by the name Ali, you'll be called Abu Ali. Rasulullah had a son by the name Qasim, so what did we call him? Abu Qasim. Amir al-Mu'mineen has a son by the name, oldest son is Hassan. He's called what? Abul Hassan. And then when you come to our third Imam, all of his sons are Ali, right? He named every one of his sons Ali, and he named every one of his daughters as Fatima. Ali Akbar, Ali Awsat, Ali Asghar, all of his sons are named Ali. Why is Imam Hussein known as Aba Abdullah or Abu Abdullah? That's his agnomen. Why is he known as that? Because of his youngest son, Hazrat Ali Asghar. Because the name of Ali Asghar was Abdullah, or known as Abdullah al-Radi', the one who was still, an infant, a 6-month-old. So why is it that Imam is given this kunyat from his youngest son and not from his oldest son? The answer to that is that these kunyat are given to them by Rasulullah. Rasulullah had given these titles to all of the Imams, and that is why our 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajul Sharif, is known as Aba Saleh. His kunyat is Abu Saleh or Aba Saleh. But there's a debate whether Imam has any sons, whether Imam has any children for that matter, let alone a child by the name Saleh. And Abu Ja'far, too, one of our other Imams who did not have a son by the name Ja'far. So to explain this concept, that this is not a fixed thing, rather whatever Rasulullah gave the kunyat to these Imams, they adopted those kunyat. And whatever the laqab Rasulullah had given to these Imams, they adopted these alqab. And that is the reason the Rasulullah had initially, from the very beginning, announced the imamat of all of the Imams, so that a person would not have any doubt whatsoever that who will be the next Imam, who will be the one coming afterwards. Imam Raza had faced a very difficult situation like no one else had faced, where many of his followers who would have made the seamless transmission or would have transferred from the previous Imam's imamat to his imamat, that was not the case. There came about a group by the name of Waqifiyya. They stopped believing in imamat. They stopped at the imamat of our 7th Imam, saying that our 7th Imam went into occultation, went into ghaiba, and therefore he does not have any heir, or he does not have anyone who will be the next Imam after him. And therefore our 8th Imam faced that very difficult situation. Before I get to some of the historical aspects of the life of our 8th Imam, and I have quite a few of them for you tonight, I wanted to share from the very beginning, before usually, our life, our time span when we're listening to a lecture. Someone said, first 15 minutes we listen with our heart, next 15 minutes we might listen with our ears, and then after the first 30 minutes, we might not even listen at all, or we turn off our ears, or we might be listening but we're not really focused or paying attention. So I wanted to get this in the first initial 30 minutes out to you before I get to some of those stories which are fascinated by itself, but these may be the things that you have heard before. Therefore, even if you don't pay any attention to them, it may not matter. But what matters that I wanted to address is in the beginning is this tradition from our 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Raza, alayhi salatu wasalam. You'll find this hadith in the book called Tuhful Uqul. And this has been translated into English, so it is available. These are the maxims and the sayings of the intellectual, maxims of the intellectual. You can find this online, the PDF file of it. These are basically the sayings of all of our Ma'sumin. And in that, the writer, Nasha'ba Harrani, he narrates this tradition from our 8th Imam. He says, وَقَالَ 8th Imam says, لا يتم عقل امرئ مسلم حتى تكون فيه 10 خصال. The aql and the intellect. Now the book is also called Tuhful Uqul, and this hadith is relevant because Imam is also talking about the aql of insan. He said the aql of insan is not completed until he reaches or has these 10 attributes. So Imam ﷺ, from the very beginning, is talking about the concept of someone having a perfect intellect, or someone who's reaching the highest levels of intellect, but they can't until they have these 10 features. Al-khayru minhu ma'mul. You might look at these words of Imam and you say, what does this have to do with the aql altogether? You know, when we think about aql, when we talk about aql and intellect, we talk about philosophical theories, we talk about discoveries, we talk about, you know, difficult formulas and all that stuff. But look where Imam is driving you and he's drawing your attention to. He says, before a person, insan, reaches the maximum height of his aql and his intellect, they must have these 10 attributes in them. Number one, al-khayru minhu ma'mul, hope of anything good coming out of this individual. So if I'm a very intellectual person, but you don't see any good coming out of me, that means I'm not an intellectual person. You might look at certain individuals in the history saying, oh, this guy was at the peak of intelligence. But if there was no good coming out of that individual, according to Imam, al-khayru minhu ma'mul. Ma'mul is hope. Hoping for good from this person. That's number one. Wal-sharru minhu ma'mun. Intellectual is someone that we are safe from the shar and the evil of that person. Because as humans, we have good and we have bad. We're not masoom. That is the prime difference between us and masoomin, that we have both good and evil. Imam says that while that evil exists, what is the case? وَالشَّرُّ مِنْهُ مَعْمُونَ. People are safe from the evil of this individual. وَيَسْتَكْثِرُ قَلِيلَ الْخَيْرِ مِنْ غَيْرِهِ. Imam then goes and makes things even more difficult. He said he considers others' little bit of good abundant. Have you seen people, and they're very few and they're very rare, who will come and who will encourage you even if your effort was very, very little minor. Usually you find the sifat in your parents. You find the sifat in your father, in your mother. That even if the deed that a child has performed is very minute, you will find that the father will encourage, will say, oh, this is the best. No one has done something like this. Even if something that you have done is very, very little, and it's not really magnitude or high or exalted, whatever the case may be. But that is the love of a father and a mother, that they want to encourage you. Imam says, no, at the peak of intelligence, person is someone yastakbiru qalil al-khayr min ghayrihi. He considers other individuals' little bit of khair to be abundant. وَيَسْتَقِلُّ كَثِيرَ الْخَيْرِ مِن نَفْسِهِ. But he belittles his own good deeds. He makes it big case out of other people's very little good, making it to be a big deal. But whatever good he had, even if it was abundant, he considers it to be belittled and little. وَلَا يَسْأَمُ مِنْ طَلَبِ الْحَوَائِجِ إِلَيْهِ. He isn't annoyed by the hajat and the requests of the others. Have you seen people that when you ask them one time, they'll be helpful. Ask them second time, they'll be helpful. Third time, you start seeing attitude. Fourth time, you'll see that this person is not answering your calls. Fifth time, you know, cold shoulder. Don't speak to me again. Don't ask again. I've done enough. That is the difference between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the difference between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When a person asks another human being, we get annoyed when someone knocks on our door all too very often. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets annoyed when a person stops knocking on his door. That's the difference. He said, I'm annoyed by the person who does not ask me, who does not, question, or who does not ask for dua. That's the matter of annoyance for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, how good is your ibadat and your sajda? You considered me worthy of your prostration and your sajda, but after you finish your salat, you don't raise your hand in your ibadat, in your dua. الَّذِينَ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنِ. Now what good is this ibadat of yours that you finish your salat, but you do not ask for any dua afterwards? No. Ad-dua silahul mu'min. Make sure that you use this opportunity. Imam said, La yas'amu min talab al-hawaj ilayhi, that he's not annoyed by the hajat of others. Wala yamullu min talab al-ilm tula dahrihi, and he's not tired of seeking knowledge all his life. Have you ever come across people when they're told something, especially of the religious matter, they'll say, oh, we've never heard of that. True, because there are many things that you still haven't heard of. No, we've heard it differently. We were always under the impression that this is how it's supposed to be done. Where are you bringing this new stuff from? Or this is something which we've never heard of. I've been listening to speeches and lectures for the past 30 years, 40 years. I've never heard something like this. True. Because for 30 years, 40 years, not everything has been mentioned to you. Insan is someone, according to the riwayat of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, utlubul ilm min al-mahdi ila al-lahd. That you should be constantly seeking knowledge from your cradle till your grave. So Imam says one of the perfection of aql is la yamullu min talab al-ilm tula dahrihi, that he's never tired of seeking knowledge all his life. And that's why we're so glad to be attached and associated with Maktab-e Ahl Bayt and Maktab-e Tashayyo, that every day when we come together doing the dhikr of Ahl Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam, it increases in our knowledge. Mere fact that we are sitting in the gathering, in the Jashn of Ahl Bayt, it is a matter of education for us. So that is one of the benefits of it. Imam says, Al-faqru fillahi ahabbu ilayhi min al-ghina. Poverty for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is superior and preferred over being rich. That is the level of intellect that Imam is mentioning. He says, وَالظُّلُّ فِي اللَّهِ أَحَبُّ إِلَيْهِ مِنَ الْعِزَّ فِي أَدُوِّهِ. Disgrace and dhillat for the sake of Allah is preferred over the false pride in front of his enemies. And then Imam ﷺ said, last two, وَالْخُمُولُ أَشْهَى إِلَيْهِ مِنَ الشُّهْرَةِ. He prefers anonymity over fame. What people go to the extent in these days to get a little bit of fame. You find that people haven't left any area untouched when it comes to their fame. We live in the social media world. So you have people have their own YouTube channel. In fact, this last year, entire pandemic gave this idea to many people to start their own videos and start their own, channels and their YouTube channels to, do something creative to get followers, and so that, and sometimes you can monetize your videos, so you can earn money by doing that as well if you get lucky and, your channel becomes a hit or whatever the case may be. So people go to the extent. Sometimes the purpose behind it might be just to get what they have across board so that people benefit from what you have. So you have a skill, you want others to find out about it, you want to share this with others. For example, a physician, a doctor, while they have their regular work, they say, well, let me start a podcast, let me start a YouTube channel so that I'll give tips for free to those who are, for example, in need. So they will go ahead and use that. And an alim and a scholar would go ahead and create their own YouTube channel so that they'll produce videos which might be beneficial in the area of in ulum ad-din, for example. A reciter might create their YouTube channel so that, their beautiful voice, melodious voice, they will recite the poetry, they'll recite whatever, and so that they will get people. One purpose could be just for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one thing. Yes, this is all good. Other would be what? To gain some sort of fame and some sort of attention. Imam said, as far as the height of intellect is concerned, he said, وَالْخُمُولُ أَشْهَى إِلَيْهِ مِنَ الشُّهْرَةِ. He prefers anonymity over fame. And then lastly, Imam says, Al-ashiratu wa mal-ashiratu. And the last thing, the 10th thing. And what is this 10th thing? قَالَ لَا جَرَى أَحَدًا إِلَّا قَالَ هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِّنِّي. The height of intellect in an individual is that he does not see anyone except that he says, هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِّنِّي, that that person is better than me. That this person is better than me. How many of us, I'm sure many of you do this, but I'm speaking about myself, that how many of us think this way, that when we come across other people, oh, that person is not good enough. Never, can't even come closer to what I have. Can't even come closer to my zuhud, my asceticism, my taqwa, my ilm, my this, my that. I'm better, I'm superior, I'm afdal. Imam says, if you have these things associated, that I have this, I have this, I am this, I am this, then you have not even touched the height. Forget about the height of intellect. You have not even gone to the threshold which requires any sort of intelligence whatsoever. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There are many stories in this was just the tradition, a hadith that I wanted to get across in the first 30 minutes of your focusing. Now, if you want to phase out of the discussion, that is fine nonetheless, but still I hope that I can keep you interactive until the namaz, which is around 8:50. So inshallah, I'll go up until then. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the things that our 8th Imam paid a great deal of attention is in regards to the Shia Janazah. In this past 1 year, there have been many people in our community who passed away. And because of the restrictions, we may not have been able to come to their janazah or to go to Qabristan, which is rightly so. But outside of this is something which is emphasized a great deal by Masumi. One of the companions of Imam Ibn Sharashub writes in his book that Musa ibn Sayyad, he said, I went to see Imam, and one of the streets of Tus, while I was visiting Imam got out of his house when he heard the sound of and the noise of people wailing and crying and weeping. Imam got out of his house and there was a janazah. Imam took part in the janazah. So I went up to Imam and I said to Imam, oh Imam, do you know this person that you are attending his janazah? And there's so many janazahs. Do you have to attend every single one of them? Imam says, Man shayya'a janazata waliyyin min awliya'ina kharaja min dunubihi kayawma waladathu ummuhu. He said, whoever attends the janazah of a wali of our awliya, one of our followers, one of our believers, one of our lovers, one of our, those who belong to us, when you attend the janazah of our beloved, kharaja min dunubihi kayawma waladathu ummuhu. He comes out of, it's a little bit early for Allah, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He comes out of his zunub and his sins the day he was given birth by his mother. So the day you're born, are there any sins on your shoulder? The day you're born, are there any sins on your record? You don't come to this world having a record, full of sins or good deed or bad deeds for that matter. No. You come here with a clean slate and there's nothing written about it. You get to write what you want to write on it. Imam says, one who attends the janazah of our awliya, kharaja min dunubihi. He exits, or his sins come off of him the day he was born and given birth by his mother. And then Imam took part in the tadfeen. He said, when Imam took part in the tadfeen, he said to that person, Ya fulan ibn fulan, abshir al-jannah. Oh whoever, son of whoever, give you basharat of Jannah, fala khawfa alayka ba'da hadhihi as-sa'a. There's no khawf upon you after this hour is over. So Imam is given the good news and glad tidings to those who are his followers. Musa ibn Sayyar asked, Imam, did you know this person? You've never come in these alleys, on these streets. I've never seen you on this street, on this side of the city. Do you even know this person? This is the response that I wanted your attention for. Imam responded by saying, Ya Musa, ama alimta inna ma'ashara al-a'imma tu'rad alayna amalu shi'atina sabahan wa masa'an. O Musa, let it be known to you that we, the ma'ashar of a'imma, we the imams, to us, the amal of our followers, our Shias, are given morning and evening. Sabahan wa masa'an. Just this much. I want you to just, think about it for a minute. And then think about what we do all day long. If our amal are being explained to Imam Sabahan wa masa'an, that itself should be a matter of bringing shame to us if there is anything bad in our actions. Yes, we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara, no doubt about that. But we've gone past that. Sometimes we don't have the fear of Allah, but we have the fear of the people who are sitting in front of us. You say, Imam of your time is saying that the actions of the people are given to us sabahan wa masa'a. But this is where the grace and the lutf of Imam comes into play. When he says, فَمَا كَانَ مِنَ التَّقْصِيرِ فِي أَعْمَالِهِمْ سَأَلَنَا اللَّهُ تَعَالَى الصَّفْحُ لِصَاحِبِهِ. And whenever there is some sort of shortcoming in the actions of this individual, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the forgiveness of that action that this person has performed. Look at the mercy and the grace of Imam toward his followers. Not only that he's given the news of our whatever action that we perform, but when there's something bad in it, Imam ﷺ goes out to the extent to go ahead and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the forgiveness. Ibrahim ibn Abbas al-Saudi, and someone asked our 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Raza regarding the ayat, ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ, the last ayat of Surah Al-Kahf. Imam said, what do you think it means? He said, well, it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about the water that He has given to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about the food that He has provided for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask for the air that He has given. These are the ni'mat. Imam responded to that person. He said, if you invite your guests to your house and you provide food and drinks for them, and you provide the space for them to sit down and eat, when they're leaving, do you ask them for compensation? Do you say, pay me back for the ni'mat that I provided you for? Do you ask them, pay me for the food that I gave you? Do you ask them, give me money for the drinks that I have given to you? He said, when you and I don't consider this to be something which is good to ask our guests for compensation for the food and the drink that we have provided, and we consider it to be ma'yub, then how do you associate it with this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do you expect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be questioning us for the food that He has given, the drinks, and some of drinks that He has given to us, and the air that we breathe in? He said, Imam, then what is the ni'mat that is being referred to over here? Imam responded that after the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the nubuwwat of the anbiya, it is the imamat and the vilayat of us Ahlul Bayt, which is being referred to as the ni'mat in this particular ayah, that you will be held responsible tomorrow in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as far as the ni'mat of the vilayat of Masumin is concerned. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mamun one day asked Imam, how is Ali Qasimun Nar al Jannah? That this tradition exists that Ali is, or how is Ali the one who is deciding, who goes to Jahannam and who goes to Jannah? Imam ﷺ asked him, have you heard the hadith from Rasulullah which says, Hubbu aliyin iman wa bughduhu kufr? He said, yes, I've heard that hadith, that the love of Ali is iman and hatred and bughd toward Ali is kufr. He said, well, that is the criteria of Jannat and Jahannam. Who goes to paradise? Mu'min or kafir? He's a mu'min. So who goes to Jahannam? Mu'min or kafir? He's a kafir. He said, there you go, you have the criteria. Hubbu Ali iman wa bughduhu kufr. Mu'min will enter paradise and kafir will go to Jahannam. Imam got up and he left. He came back home. Abu Salt Harawi, he came with Imam and he said, MashaAllah, such a good answer. Such a convincing answer that you gave Mamun. And Mamun also said this, La baqani Allahu ba'daka ya Abul Hasan. That may Allah not give me life after you leave this world. Ashhadu annaka wa'adul ilmi Rasulullah. I bear witness that you are the waris of the ilm of Rasulullah. They came back home. Abu Salt said, what a good response that you give him. Imam responded by saying, no, I gave him the response ala qadri uqulihi, based on his intellect. He said, what does that mean? He said, Rasulullah has said, you speak to the people according to their aql. That answer was according to his aql. Because if I had given him the right answer, he would not have the ability to digest. I gave him a dalil, hubbu Ali iman wa bughduhu kufr. So he considered that, he put 2 and 2 together and he understood. But there's a superior dalil and proof of that, which I refrained from giving it to him because he's not ahl of that. And then he said, what is that? He said, the reality is above and beyond that, because Prophet has said, Ya Ali, anta qasimul jannati wan nar yawm al-qiyamah, taqulu lin-nar hadha li wa hadha laka. Oh, Prophet said, oh Ali, you are the one who divide between the paradise and Jahannam on the day of judgment. That whoever gets to go to Jannah, you will decide, and whoever gets to go to Jahannam, you will decide. In fact, taqulu lin-nar, you will say to the fire of hell, Hada li, this person is from me, so don't even think about it. Wahada laka, and that person is for you, so go ahead and take it. And that is the vilayat of Ali ibn Abi Talib that will come into play. That is the matter what Imam Islam is saying, that Mamun was not worthy of such an answer. So Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So these are some of the riwayat, as we have heard and we found in the lives of Imam ﷺ. There were many people, as I mentioned, the Waqifiyya was one of the groups that had stood in front of Imam, blocking his imamah. Now, they can't block the imamah, but they deviated a great deal of people from following the imamat of our 8th Imam by stopping at the imamat of 7th Imam. Imam ﷺ nonetheless dealt with all of these people in the best possible way. Abdullah ibn Mughira said that I was a Waqifi. On my way to the travels to Makkah, I held the veil of Qa'dah and I made this dua with tazarru, with zari, with weeping and crying. Oh Allah, you know what I want, and grant me and guide me to the right path, to the best of the religions. When I was returning to Medina, I thought to myself, let me stop and say salam to Imam al-Raza. He said, as soon as I reached the house of Imam al-Raza, he opened the door and he said to me, Allah has answered your request that you had made by holding the cloak of Qa'dah. He said, I had never spoken to anyone about that request. I made that request standing there while no one else was there. And I made this dua that Allah guide me to the right path. How does Imam know? He said, no one heard my request. Imam said, yes, we heard that request, and Allah has guided you to the right path, and that is the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. Otherwise, you would not have come over here. This was a tawfiq given to you. You were on your way back home. This came to your mind to go and say salam to me, yet you came to this house, and that is the response to the dua that you had made in front of Kaaba. He said, indeed, you are the waris of Anbiya. Indeed, Allah knows where to place his risalah. Last thing in this reference, inshallah, I will bring it to conclusion. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam alayhi salatu wassalam, he said that Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Balanti, one of the very, prolific muhaddiseen of the riwayat of our 8th Imam. He narrated a great deal of riwayat from our 8th Imam. He said, I went to see Imam Raza with 3 other people. And when we were done, we were leaving. Imam Raza said to me, oh, Balanti, you stay back. So he said, I stayed back. The rest of the people who had come with me, they left. And then when they had left, Imam said to me that here's a room for you to sleep, and here's the clothes that you can change. You can rest here for the night. He said to himself that I feel like that I'm the luckiest person on the face of the earth. That I am the guest of Imam Hujjat. Imagine, Imam of our time. First of all, we get to see him. And then Imam invites us to be his guest. Today, your Imam, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, invites you somewhere, wherever Imam lives, to be your guest. Imagine that honor. You would trade this honor with anything else in the world. If someone said you could have this, or you could have that. You could have the entire business of Amazon in your name, or I don't know, I can come up with any example. Or you could be the visitor and be in the company of your Imam tonight in his place of residence. What would you choose? I'm assuming and sure that all of the followers of Maktabat Tashayyu, they will, without a hesitation, pick being the guest of Imam Zamana over anything this world has to offer to us. So Balanti said, I felt like I was the greatest, best thing in the world that could have happened to me, and I felt so lucky to be the guest of Imam of the time. He said, as these things were coming into mind, Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, I finished my Sajda Shukr. I saw that Imam returned. He said to me, oh Ahmad, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam said to Sa'sa ibn Sa'han when he had fallen sick, when he was leaving, when he went to his ayadat, when he came to see him, he said, La tattakhidanna ayadati fakhran ala qawmik. Don't brag about this ayadat to your brothers, the fact that I have come to visit you. La tafkhar ala akhwanika bima fa'altu. Don't take pride in what we have done to you. This is indeed because of the status that you have with us. But Imam at the end is telling this person that while these favors might be given to you, don't let these favors come to your head in a sense that you start taking pride over people. Always keep in mind that that person that you might be belittling, today you think that there's something wrong with this person, that person might have a better status than you in the hereafter. Someone had recited earlier in the manqabat that his maqam, that all his life is spent in disobedience, but the last moment when he came to the bargah of Imam Hussein, he repented, made tawbah, and he came to Imam and he asked for his shafa'at. All of the past deeds were overlooked. Aqibat bil khair was done to her. We ask the same from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever we may have done all of our lives, but aqibat, and the end of us is upon khair and is upon the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq and ability to be able to follow the footsteps in the teachings of our 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Raza alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask, especially on this holy night when we are celebrating the birth of our 8th Imam, that he gives us the tawfiq of the shafa'at on the day of mahshar and the ziyarat of our 8th Imam in this life, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the zuhur of our awaited Imam and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala an-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala. Inshallah, we have about a couple of minutes until adhan. If you need to do wudu, please go ahead. Inshallah, we'll have adhan in 3 minutes.